Hello Rotarians, this is Trudy Grice from your Rotary International Club and District Support Team at Parramatta. We're pleased to provide you another video today. I'm joined today by my colleague Barbara Mifsud, who's our membership development expert, and by our special guest, Warwick Cavell. Warwick's been with Rotary since 2014 with the Rotary Club of Central Melbourne, and he's currently the president of that club. Warwick's professional background is that he's a business strategist and a profitable conversations facilitator with the SME market. That sounds like something we could spend an hour on just by itself. But today we've actually asked Warwick to provide some of his expertise in terms of developing strategic plans. The Rotary International incoming president, Holger Knuck, he suggested that every Rotary club has at least one strategic planning meeting a year. And given that we've all got a little bit of downtime at the moment, we thought it might be a great time for clubs to have a bit of a think about that. So today we're going to hand over to Warwick and ask him to give us some hints and tips about strategic planning. Over to you, Warwick.
Thanks, Trudy. I'll share my screen and step you through. I've done a short PowerPoint to hopefully be able to explain a few things that we're doing at our club and sharing those. So just a little bit of history about our club. I joined about, as Trudy said, back in about 2014. The membership of our club at that time was about 43 active members. In that 5 or 6 year period, we're now up to about 65, 66 active members. And we've put a lot of effort into growing the club and also developing our strategic focus. One of the things that we found was that the board really didn't get time to have a strong strategic focus, and because of the annual cycle of Rotary, we weren't getting a long-term view. So we decided to form a strategic advisory group, which we call SAG. The acronym came first, and then the names came after that. So we formed the SAG group, and the SAG is made up of the immediate past president, the president-elect, the president nominee, and the president nominee delegate. So we've got 5 lined up. And the reason we did that is because we felt that looking strategically, we needed to have a much longer time horizon than just 1 year. And also it became a training ground for the presidents. They could get involved, start to look at the strategic environment as we were moving forward, and almost a training program to get into as they moved into presidency. So we put that into place, and our focus is purely and simply the long term of the club and where it positions itself. It's not an implementation group. If any projects come out of this that need to be implemented, they're passed on to the avenues of service or passed in an appropriate direction. So we're not an implementation group, we're just purely a strategic advisory group. And a couple of things, we've had 4 or 5 key things come out of this, and we're evolving that group all the time. And that's providing us, we're learning as we go, but a couple of the things that have come out of this I want to share today. The first is the Rotary growth cycle that we've been working on and thinking about. It's not rocket science, it's not necessarily new, but putting it into a model was something that we wanted to do. And then simple, effective strategic planning with the 2 things that we spoke about. So the Rotary growth cycle to us is very simple, but it's an important growth cycle to understand, we felt. One is that obviously Rotary starts with actions, projects, humanitarian projects. We take action. Out of that action, we have achievements. We achieve results. Those achievements give us impacts on people's lives, impacts on the community, and so on. Those impacts then enable us to create stories. When we tell those stories on a consistent basis, we connect and engage with the community and people around us. And as we connect and engage with those people, we then attract and retain members and volunteers to our club, which enables us to carry out more actions, and so we repeat the cycle. But it also enables us to generate funds for foundation, which comes back to us in grants, which also fuels the action plans and the projects that we're doing. So we see this as the Rotary cycle, the growth cycle for any club, for Rotary itself. And it's not so much a cycle as it is a spiral. So as we go around this, and we came to the conclusion we need to go around this many times, and as we go around it, the more times we go around it, we increase our impact, we grow, and we grow the influence of Rotary and our club in particular. So that was the model that we sort of put together. and said that sort of encapsulates for us how we're going to grow in the future. And then we looked at the model and said, well, where is our club falling down, or not so much falling down, but where could it be improved? And we felt that the key area initially was stories. We're not consistently telling our stories. We're taking action. We're certainly achieving a lot of things, and we're having big impacts, but we're not capturing those impacts in the form of stories, and we're not communicating those stories. So we started to think about, well, how do we communicate those stories? And we started to think about social media, all the typical things that we talk about in Rotary, about how do we communicate those. And then we found out the problem in the first instance is not necessarily in the communication. The problem lay back here at the achievements and impacts. We felt that culturally our club was more focused on actions than it was achievements and impacts. So we talked a lot about actions, and but we didn't talk enough about achievements and impacts. So we didn't share the achievements and impacts. So one of the things we've done in the last 12 months is to focus on achievements and impacts. And we came up with a couple of simple messages. Action without impact is just busyness. So let's not worry too much about the actions. Let's really focus on, while we're doing the actions, what impacts we're looking to have. And the second thing we said was, impact without stories is a lost opportunity. So we needed to look at these two areas. So we then took a step back and said, well, how do we do that? And we said our goal was to embed achievements and impacts in the way we think and talk. So until achievements and impacts are embedded in the way we think and talk as club members, it's going to be difficult to communicate to the outside world, because if our club members aren't sharing those stories, and that's been part of the secret to our growth, because people are starting now to think about achievements and impacts, because we believe that it's the impacts that really attract people to our club. They want to see the impacts. They don't want to be busy. They've got enough actions to do in their lives as it is. So they're sort of saying, I don't want more things to do, but I'm really keen to see the impacts that I have improve. So we said that needed to be our goal, to embed achievement and its impacts in the way we think and talk. It becomes part of who we are, our DNA. And we said, how do we do that? So we looked at this model and we said, okay, the first thing we need to start with is not actions, but impacts. So we asked ourselves these questions: who do we want to impact, and what impact do we want to have, and why is that important to us? So we started a conversation around impacts. So those are the sort of three questions bound into one, really, that we started with. We then said, okay, in order to have those impacts, what do we need to achieve? So what do we have to achieve in order to have the impacts we want? And we set some SMART objectives. So we started the avenues of service teams looking at their SMART objectives. What do they want to achieve? And then a step back from that, we said, okay, that gets us back to the actions. What do we have to do to achieve, to have the impacts? But the important thing about this is starting with the end in mind, starting with the impact and working back to the actions. And we see that the actions is less important, but they're a key part. Obviously, for planning, for budgeting, for project design and project management, we're sort of saying, okay, we need to focus on the actions, but we never lose sight of the impacts. The whole idea is just to stay focused on the impacts. And our big strategic question is really just a simple question. So we're now focused on those achievements and impact. And our big strategic question is, how can we increase our impact? That's all we ask. How can we increase our impact in anything we do? And so that's the question that we're trying to get to flow through the club, that people think about, is just how do we increase our impact? And that becomes the key to what we're doing. As we said, that then resulted in, let's review the strategic plan. How we're doing our strategic plan. We felt that we didn't have a strong enough strategic plan at the time. And what I'll show you now is a couple of years of evolution, I guess, of where we've got to. And it's similar to models that I use with the small business clients that I use as well. So the first thing is that there are 4 key strategic questions. So we wanted to make this really simple. So the first question, and there's 3 that I want to concentrate on. So I'm going to concentrate on those 3 in a moment, but I'll give you the 4 questions. The first question is, what is the context? So the big strategic question is, what is the context our club is going to move forward in? So what's happening around us? What are the trends? What are the political, economic, social, technological trends that are going to create the environment that we're going to work in. So what is the environment we're going to work in? Having asked that question, we then focused on 3 critical questions. The first question is, where do you want or need to be in the future, and why is that important to the club? So the key here is just to focus on where we wanted to be without asking ourselves how we're going to get there, but it was just purely and simply about where we wanted to be. Then the next question is, well, where are we now? What are the opportunities and challenges today that we need to address in order to get to where we want to be? And then the third question is, obviously, how will you address these challenges and opportunities and challenges and move forward to where we want to be? Now, this is not rocket science again, but we found that there were some very important subtleties that we felt that we could start with the where or we could start with the how. It didn't really matter, but we had to leave the how until last. That was a critical factor. And the second critical factor was that when we're in the where, we do not ask how questions. When we're in the now, we do not ask how questions. Only when we get to the how do we ask those questions. So we stay in the mode that we're in. So we had to focus very heavily, because what was very tempting is we started to create a vision of where we wanted to be, and then club members would say, oh yeah, but how are you going to do that? Now that would distract the whole process. So we stopped that, said, no, that is later in the process. Can you hold that? Because that really kills off the strategic process. So then we went to the now and we started to look at the issues we had to address in the now. And again, people were saying, well, how are you going to address those issues? We said, no, let's not worry about that yet. We've got dozens of issues. If we start addressing each one singly, well, then we'll never get anywhere. We need to prioritize first and only come up with the top 2 or 3 issues. And then we will go take those top 2 or 3 issues into the how, and we'll explore ways to address those top 2 or 3 issues. And that became the thinking process that we worked through. So the red lines or the red arrows represented our thinking process. And as I said, the impact lies in the subtlety, not so much in the questions, but making sure we stay focused on the where question when we're in the where and so on. So that becomes the thinking process. The implementation process is how the woman is walking up the steps. So we obviously implement from the now, using the how to get to the where. That's the implementation process, but the thought process is represented by the red arrows. So we then said, okay, we need a planning process or document to support that. We're not so focused on a detailed document. We don't want a 20 or 30 page document. In these times of rapid change, before the ink is dry, the document's out of date. So we wanted a very concise plan. So we developed, we used this planning format where we used those 3 questions. Where do we want to be? Where are we now? And then how are we going to get there? So that became the format that we used for our strategic plan. We broke into 2 parts. One is the strategic plan, which is on 1 page, and another one is the action plan, which I'll show you in a minute, which we've got on a separate page. So it basically has become a 2-page document. So we started looking at what's our vision, purpose or mission, values, BHAG, which is Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal, which comes from Built to Last, a book called Built to Last by Jim Collins. But we need to have a very clear goal for our club. So then we said, look, but Rotary International already has a strategic plan, so we could pre-populate some parts of our strategic plan using the Rotary International strategic plan. So Rotary International already has a vision, and that's the vision we want to hook into. So we felt that we didn't need to create another vision for our club, which was not necessarily consistent or conflict with. We didn't need a vision for our club. This is a vision we wanted to hook into and be part of. So together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities and in ourselves. So we said that we felt was a really strong vision. So we then said, okay, let's use that because that's what we want to be part of. We then said, well, what's our piece in that? What's our part of the jigsaw puzzle? And that became the purpose or mission. And we came up with and this is still evolving, but we came up with a simple purpose or mission: a progressive and connected club with strong networks and a diverse membership, a catalyst for social change in the communities we serve. So we said that was our particular mission that fits within that global vision. Now, where that came from was we did some work about 18 months ago or 12 months ago on what are the key words that mean something to our club. And the words that are involved there, progressive, connected, networked, and catalyst, were the 4 key words that came out of our club. So all our members got together and said, these are the words we wanted to use to represent our club. And so that was what came out of that. And it was probably about 18 months ago or more. And those are the 4 key words, and we then formed that into that purpose or mission statement. We then said, well, look at our values. Well, again, we used the values of Rotary International. We've all signed on to those values. They're part of who we are: fellowship, integrity, diversity, service, and leadership. So we said, again, we don't necessarily need to create specific values because they're the ones that got us involved in Rotary in the first place. So we're happy to work with those, and obviously wanted to link in the 4-way test because we think that needs to be front and center as well. So we included that in the plan. And then we said, what's our big, hairy, audacious goal? And clubs can have goals such as increasing the diversity and number of members to whatever number. So you could develop your own goals in that space. As I said before, our particular goal is not so much a numeric goal. It's a qualitative rather than a quantitative goal to embed achievements and impacts into the way we think and act as a club. So that became our BHAG. We felt our big, hairy, audacious goal, if we got that right, everything would flow from that. So that's what we've been focusing on over the last 12 months, to embed the achievements and impacts, the way avenues of service teams report back we only get them to report back their achievements and their impacts. And at the start of the year, they set out their SMART goals for the year and what impacts they want those SMART goals to have. So we're not so much interested in them presenting their actions. We want them to present their achievements or their goals for the year and the impacts they're looking to have. So we're focused on the impact. So that becomes a key part of what we're doing. We then looked at the strategic priorities. And again, there are 4 strategic priorities within the Rotary International strategic plan. So we said, why not use those? So increase our impact, expand our reach, enhance participant engagement, and increase our ability to adapt. So what are we going to do under each of those headings in our club to further those strategic priorities? So in this way, we've now developed a strategic plan, a 3-year time horizon that ties in with the Rotary International plan and makes sense to our members. It also links our members back to the Rotary International plan, so there's no disconnect there. And then we start looking at how we might be able to work those forward. So that became our 3-year strategic plan with the items listed down the bottom. Then we said, okay, we need now to develop an action plan. So our action plan, then we said, what is the goal of the action plan? And we said our goal was to keep making meaningful progress on a consistent basis. We're not going to fix everything overnight. So the idea is, as long as we're making meaningful progress on a consistent basis, we are moving forward and we're achieving what we want to do. So how do we do that? And we felt that what we needed to do was to establish a 90-day rhythm. So we had to start implementing strategic actions on a 90-day basis. So what we did was to draw up a 1-page plan which focused on the next 90 days. So from that broader 3-year strategic plan, which particular goals or what goals are we going to focus on over the next 90 days? Not too many. Smaller clubs may only focus on 1. We often focus on 2 or 3 over the 90-day period. And what do we need to achieve in the next 90 days to be convinced that we're making meaningful progress on a consistent basis? So we establish a clear 90-day goal. We then look at the milestones we need to hit, by when in that 90 days, by whom, and then a status. So we also, small subtleties, we do the by when first rather than the by whom, because if you do the by whom first, then the by when is influenced by the time available to that particular person, and they might defer it, and that may not suit us strategically. So we need to make sure that when we set the by when date, it's the date that's important to us as a club. Then when we set the by whom, we find the most appropriate person who can commit to that time frame. And then the status column has two things in it. It has a number and the colour. The number represents percentage complete, so between 0 and 100, and the colour are the traffic light signals. Red means it's not on track and I don't know how to get it back on track. Orange means it's not on track, but I do know how to get back on track. And green means it's on track. And our basic principle when we meet is that we are not allowed to discuss the greens because that's wasting time. That's on track. We're not allowed to discuss the orange because the person says that they can pull it back on track unless it remains orange for a couple of meetings. Then we query whether it really is orange or red. The only thing we're allowed to discuss is the red ones. And so if we had a red number 50, it would indicate that that task is 50% complete, but we don't know how to finish it. We're stuck. So then we would discuss as a group how we might move that forward. So that gives you a bit of an idea, and we think that this 90-day rhythm monthly is too short because we just can't get enough done in a month. We found that 6 months and 12 months is just too long. People lose momentum. So we felt that establishing a 90-day rhythm was the way to do that. And we're still working on that, trying to get that rhythm so it becomes embedded in the way we think. And we're working on that, moving things forward on a strategic basis and supporting the rest of the club. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the two areas that we're focused on. So hopefully that's been useful, and thank you.
Thank you so much. That's terrific, Warwick.
Thanks, Trudy.
I think that was terribly useful and very, very interesting. Barbara, did you have any comments you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you so much, Warwick. Yeah, such great food for thought and ideas for clubs to think about, particularly now during this time of, unprecedented times, of a time that clubs can focus on their strategic plan. Just as Warwick mentioned, Rotary International does have a new strategic plan, and you can find out more information about it on rotary.org. So if you do go to rotary.org membership, strategic plan, and then you will be able to see our action plan. So I'll just share the screen with you now so that you can see that. That's what it looks like. Also there you can download a strategic planning guide as well, and there's also some information about what clubs can do to help put Rotary's International Strategic Plan into action. We do also have some supporting documents as well, such as a Rotary Club health check or membership satisfaction survey to get you thinking about the now, what Warwick was talking about the now. And you can find that at rotary.org/membership. So thank you, Trudy, and I will just share my screen back to you.
That's okay. I'm back. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thanks again, Warwick. I think that was a really excellent model and framework for clubs to be able to work through and adopt together with the Rotary International resources. So we wish everyone well and happy strategic planning. Thanks.
Thanks, Trudy. Thanks, Barbara. See you.